What is up, guys? FATEDLIME, aka Travis here, bringing you some Battlefield 3 Spas-12 action. This is just a quick TDM where I go 20-9 with the Spas-12. Battlefield is not like Call of Duty. You graze a guy with your shotgun, you're not going to get a free kill. You miss, you die. So, as you can tell by the title, today's topic is...
Yeah, baby, that's it. Just a little bit more. Yeah.
Did you like that, you dirty dogs? I bet you did. You just loved every second of that. Anyways, so we're talking porn, if you couldn't tell. The history of porn. And we've got to go all the way back to 16th century Rome. So, Rome is the birthplace of modern pornography. The history began amongst the print culture of the Italian Renaissance. In 1524, Marcantonio Raimondi published 16 sexually explicit engravings that were designed by Giulio Romano. Engravings. You imagine having 30-pound pieces of granite sitting on your lap while you're trying to, let the dogs out, I guess. Anyways, the Amati, they were titled the Amati, and the Amati visually depicted figures from Greco-Roman mythology all the way to classical antiquity, enjoying the pleasures of copulation. That's sex, by the way, guys. In response to this scandal, Pope Clement VIII placed Raimondi in prison, where he remained for almost a year until a consortium including Pietro Arencio, who is the founder of modern pornography, negotiated his release. Pietro, an Italian author, was the product of Renaissance humanism. He wrote two pornographic masterpieces, the Sonetti and the Regiamenti, both of which were circulated throughout the Roman elite. The Sonetti, or Argentio's postures as it came to be known, combined Arencio's sexually explicit sonnets with the engravings of Romano from the Emoti. The Regiamenti was an extension of Arencio's postures, and it was a document that dialogued between prostitutes, and became the prototype for what would be normal porn in the 17th century. Arencio's work was pornographic, voyeuristic, controversial, heretical, I think I said that right, and politically incorrect. Nowhere in European history prior to Pietro Arencio do we encounter the combination of explicit sexual detail and evident intention to arouse, at least not for another 300 years. Now we're moving on to the 18th century. The breakthrough work for 18th century pornography was Memoirs of a Woman of Pleasure, also known as Fanny Hill, by John Cleland. Initially published from 1748 to 1749, it was the first pornographic novel and the first work of English pornography to be written in the normal fashion. Deemed obscene in 1750, Memoirs of a Woman of Pleasure would remain underground for over 2 centuries, until 1966 in the United States and 1970 in Britain. Spoiler alert, guys. The plot summary is that a young orphan girl named Fanny Hill moves to London at the age of 15 and falls into prostitution. She loses her virginity to a nobleman named Charles, whereby they fall in love and Fanny becomes pregnant. At the height of their love, Charles is kidnapped away by his father, which leads Fanny back into prostitution and a diverse range of sexual exploits. In the end, Fanny inherits a small fortune from a rich benefactor, and she stumbles upon Charles, where all is forgiven, and Charles proposes to Fanny, and they end up getting married. Isn't that sweet? I know, I thought it was sweet. Sorry if I ruined it for you guys. Anyways, now we're moving down to the 19th century, because apparently that was it for the 18th century. I don't know. Commercial pornography, designed purely for titillation, flourished in the 19th century. As printing costs continued to fall, pornographic material was progressively marketed to the consumer class. By 1837, there were over 50 pornographic shops in London's Holywell Street, and by 1871, New York was selling more than 100,000 pornographic books per year. In Britain and the United States, prosecution for obscene literature by private organizations were regularly successful. In Britain, prosecutions were led by the Organization for the Reformation of Manners and the Society for the Suppression of Vice. In the United States, prosecutions were led by the New York Society for the Suppression of Vice and the Ward Society in Boston. So I guess during the 19th century, it was mostly a battle between right and wrong, whether or not pornography should be allowed out into the public. So looks like it won, because porn's still here. And we're moving on to modern times, 20th century, even though we're in the 21st. But you get me. One of the first magazines to display photographs of females nude was a French magazine, Le Frison, at the turn of the century. At that time, it was increasingly common for French magazines to publish news under the guise of naturism. American magazines were less risque. They displayed reproductions of erotic paintings with the occasional live model. Such magazines included Nickel, which was published from 1894 to 1905, and Metropolitan, which was published from 1895 to 1911. Now, in the 1920s, the Americans produced Tijuana Bibles. They were a cheap form of pornography that contained stapled pages of gammy photos, dirty stories, and or erotic comics. They were printed on low-grade paper and inked off the same printers that made labels for whiskey bottles. Tijuana Bibles were especially popular during the Great Depression as a cheap form of entertainment. 30 years later, in the December of 1953, Hugh Hefner published the first edition of Playboy magazine in the United States. A nude Marilyn Monroe was the first Playboy centerfold. Now, posting nudes wasn't anything new, but Hefner's achievement was to turn Playboy into the liberal voice of a masculinized middle class and to marshal advertisers behind his Playboy philosophy, a justification of a post-war good life that he said included sex as recreation. While Playboy was controversial, it never showed photographs of pubic hair or genitals in the early days. Hefner managed to keep the censors at bay by combining high-quality journalism with relatively respectable photography. Now, in 1965, Bob Guccione published the first edition of Penthouse in the United Kingdom. The first American edition was launched in 1969. More risque than Playboy, Penthouse photographs contained pubic hair. Penthouse was popular with persons who wanted more explicit photographs and written content than Playboy. And another 10 years later, Larry Flynt published Hustler magazine in the U.S. Hustler went where no mass-market men's magazine had gone before. It displayed female genitalia, hardcore sex acts, various fetishes, and sex involving sex toys. Hustler magazine continuously pushed social boundaries. It challenged social taboos, held contempt for the existing obscenity laws, and stridently campaigned for the magazine's right to free speech. Playboy, Penthouse, and Hustler have been the most popular magazines in the history of pornography. Traditionally, each brand has dominated a specific niche within the men's magazine market. Playboy is known for its softcore content and great journalism. Hustler is known for its hardcore material, and Penthouse occupies the space in between. Men's magazines were the primary vehicle for pornographic distribution from the early 20th century to the 1970s. Their popularity declined along the advent of, you guessed it, movies. And we all know about modern porno. The only thing that has changed since the 1970s is the pubic hair. And I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys learned something about porn that you didn't know before. And if you didn't, well, you're a freaking genius, because I learned so much. I thought porn started with Playboy. Maybe a little earlier with some black and white pictures or whatever. But I mean, whatever. If you if you guys did happen to learn something, or if you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. Leave me some comments. And like always, guys, till next time, this is FATEDLIME signing off. And hey guys, if you missed my last video, click the clip and it'll bring you right there. So until next time, FATEDLIME out.